Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, or Rav Shmuel Rosh be with you at your service with this week's 10-minute Torah. This week we will be, as you see in the caption there, Parashat Tetzaveh for our Hebrew year, 5784. Before we get into that, as usual, I'd like to express some gratitude and some thank you to the activities at our synagogue, Temple Shalom of Ontario. Last week, we had a lot of things going on Sunday. We had an author come, and there was a presentation, and this was going on while we had our monthly in-person Hebrew school, where our Hebrew students, our young students, came in, and they were treated by the wonderful Michelle Benitez. So a shout out to her for leading the kids in a discussion about Shabbat with some activities, while I worked with the parents, right? And we talked about the Torah. We looked at the various differences between the Ashkenazic script of our two Torahs, the regular Torah, which we just got back from Self-Air on site in Miami, Florida, and thank you to them for a wonderful job in cleaning up our Torah a little bit. I've been joking that our Torah went to Florida for a little vacation, had a spa, maybe a massage, who knows, and came back all refreshed. And we found out that the long Torah that we have is actually a Czechoslovakian Torah. So, and of course, we had the Sephardic Torah. So the inscriptions or the writing on the parchment of the Ashkenazi's Torah is a little different than the Sephardic Torah. Sephardic Torah is simpler. For a Lamed, for example, it goes, I don't know if I do it backwards like this. Okay, the Sephardic is typically one, maybe two quill strokes. Whereas with the Ashkenazic, it's a little bit more embellished. You got a little tip on the top, a line, a bar, comes down like this, a little thing on the bottom. So it's a little bit more embellished the way you see it, whereas the Sephardic writing, the Sephardic Torah font is a little bit more simple. And we discussed a little bit of that, discussed tefillin. I have a pair of tefillin. It was my great-grandfather's that has been restored. It's coming back. You can tell I'm a big Jewish geek, right? A Jew geek, right? That I get excited about restoring tefillin. And they're going to return the parchment that is not what they call pasul. It's actually, or it is pasul rather, which means it's dirty, it's not right. There is a fey where the tip of the middle of the letter touches the bottom. That makes it not kosher. Let's use that word. And we're going to be able to display that, which is real exciting for me. So, second thing I want to discuss real quickly, and I don't discuss this enough on these recordings. I talk about it at my shul, maybe a little too much, but I am so emotionally and spiritually invested, as most of us, if not all of us are, or I'd like to say all of us, but I know unfortunately that's not the case, in what's going on in Israel and us defeating the terror organization known as Hamas. These people are not soldiers as we think of soldiers. They don't wear uniforms. They kill civilians. In fact, that's how this whole thing started, this latest war. We don't know that our soldiers, our brothers and sisters in Israel, go into Gaza. They don't know who's a soldier, who's a civilian. We don't know if the Gaza Health Ministry, we know who they are. They're probably inflating the casualty numbers. Of course, any casualty is horrible, but we do know that our brothers and sisters in arms in the IDF are taking their time. They're being very meticulous and fastidious to root out Hamas, find the remaining hostages, and reduce civilian casualties to an absolute minimum. Now, of course, in war, unfortunately, that's can't be done. But what the statistics, and these are statistics, cold hard facts are bearing out, is that the civilian casualties in this conflict, in this war, are less than other wars. Usually it's somewhere in the neighborhood. I've seen 3-1, I've seen 6-1. Whereas in Gaza, with the IDF, it's less than 1-1. So less civilians are casualties than the soldiers, which is, it's not a great thing. I mean, we'd love to keep it to zero, but it is the way it is. Okay, so I just wanted to shout out to that because, we want this to be over soon. I've seen some indications that maybe it is, and that would be great. And we want that. We want to live in peace. We want to see Gaza become a thriving economy working with Israel. And my gosh, when you think about the economic and socioeconomic potential of the area down in the Middle East, competing with the rest of the world, you know, the West will have an economic challenge. So, okay, let's talk about Tetzaveh. Tetzaveh starts, the Parsha starts, and Tetzaveh is from the word mitzvah, which is command, or as the Rabbi Sofer explained to me, it really comes from the word connection. Starts with a very brief discussion about the oil, the olive oil that needs to be pressed, that needs to be pure. And why do we start out with this in this particular portion? The rest of the portion discusses the clothing, the raiment for the high priest and the other priests, and then it discusses the ordination, right, of the priesthood, and the oil is used for that. So it's actually very appropriate that we start our portion with discussing the oil. And it goes into great detail of the 8 garbs that the high priest wears. Now, 8's an interesting number, and I say that contrasted to the only 4 garments, which we will hear about later on when the priest is officiating for Yom Kippur. But it talks about going from top to bottom. Learned this when I was going through nursing training. Yes, I went through nursing training. Okay, so they have the mitered hat. And how do we know what the priest wore? Well, take a look at the Torah next time the ark's open. That basically, the coverings of the Torah are modeled after what the priest wore. So we have this big mitered hat. We have kind of a forehead plate that says Kadosh Hashem. That's gold, that's fitted on with blue threads. They have kind of a breech that's against their skin. They have kind of an overgarment, kind of a vest like the ephod. Then they have the breastplate, which was folded in half, the parchment, and we believe that it was the name of God, the real name of Hashem that was put in there, because we have the 12 stones, 4 columns, 3 rows each, 12 stones engraved with each engraved with the name of the tribe. And this was kind of almost a supernatural way of talking to God. You had a question and the stones would light up, and then it was up to the high priest to figure out what the message was. Then we have this, on the bottom of the robe, we have these little gold bells interspersed with these pomegranates. So the colors of the high priest's garment was crimson, techelet, which is kind of a sea blue, and purple, red, and blue. Okay, and those are royal colors. And the threads were interspersed with kind of a gold thread. It was taken from actual gold and woven in it, so you had gold. Plus, so it was a very royal color. Now, later on, when we hear about the king really didn't have very special clothing. It's actually the high priests and the priests that had the special clothing. They had royal clothing. Why? Well, they were God's spokespeople. Now, we need to distinguish, because in Judaism, unlike other religions, everybody has a personal connection with Hashem. The priests were really officiators. They were schooled in how to do the sacrifices and the processes and the prayers. Today, the rabbis have taken over, as there's no longer a temple where we do this. So being God's servants, if you will, they needed to be dressed accordingly. So we had a discussion in my Torah class last week about, well, what a boring portion, about the putting together the tabernacle and the wood and the curtains and the furniture, and in a way, this is kind of the same thing. It's just, okay, we're getting a lesson. But isn't it interesting that as we get to the end of Exodus, we will be reading where they actually did all this stuff. First, God's telling us to do it, then we do it. And there's 4 parshas devoted to this. So there's some very big importance to this. Now, I guess we're not going to go into the metaphysical implications of the colors and the garments, and that's maybe for another time. And quite frankly, I don't know if I'd be able to deal with that, to talk about the symbolism and, why the crown and, well, some of it's obvious. Gold is a precious metal. And they should be dressed regally, in accordance with the job that they're doing, right? So that's a part of it. The actual clothes, why it's designed the way it is. Well, some of it is just basically comfort and convenience, but maybe there's other implications too, something to consider. Okay, thank you all for listening, and thank you for attending our functions. There will be more. This is the start. We're growing. We're bringing people back, and maybe one of the good things about this conflict in Israel is, Jews are starting to come together, and we're starting to get better relationship with non-Jews who understand the implications of the brutality that these terrorists, these Hamas terrorists, have inflicted upon our people. Meanwhile, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much, and Shabbat, we'll be seeing you.